Going to call the Committee of the Whole meeting for Tuesday, March 5th, 2024 at 3:30 to order. And do we have any changes before we adopt the agenda? Staff, council? Seeing none, I'll call for adoption of today's agenda.
Move adoption.
Moved by Councillor Isaacson, seconded by Councillor Southcott. All in favor? Thank you. Adoption of the minutes. Minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting held on February 13, 2024. Would you like to adopt those?
I'll move adoption.
Thank you, Councillor Isaacson, seconded by Mayor Wasnow. Any comments, concerns? Hearing none. All in favor? Thank you very much. Delegations. I'm happy to announce we have an ex-councillor in the chamber today by the name of Debbie D, who is representing Suncoast Cannabis Shop regarding the business license fees charged to retail recreation cannabis stores in Powell River. Ex-councillor D, you're called upon.
Mayor, Council, thank you. I'd like to introduce Kelly Rankin. He is the owner of Bean Cannabis in Powell River. I'm the managing partner of Suncoast Cannabis in Powell River. I think you've seen some letters that we've sent regarding the licensing fees. So what happened was the 2018 report from staff suggested that other communities were charging $5,000, $10,000, $13,000, so Powell River should charge $2,000. There really wasn't any justification or anything for that we could find. And I also believe that part of what happened was maybe that staff and council of the day maybe thought that a lot of resources were going to be used when cannabis was legalized and stores opened, and in the form of policing, ambulance, fire, things like that. And it's actually very little to nothing. We've called police once at our store, and that was because one of the staff accidentally hit the panic button with her hip. So we've never had to call anyone. So no resources are being used. It's small retailers all over in every industry are struggling, and cannabis is no different. In a market in Powell River that's already saturated with 5 private stores and 1 government store in direct competition with us, it's not the financial windfall that everyone thought it was going to be, and we have a very finite market that we market to. Right now, we are paying $2,000 a year for our business license, whereas Capone's liquor store right next door to us pays $180. We are categorized in Tier 8 of the Schedule A license fees. Any business that meets the following criteria: cannabis retail store or vacation rental. We just can't afford this $2,000 a year. It's too much. We'd really like it if council would consider moving us to Tier 3, where liquor stores, beer and wine stores are $180 a year. And that's any business that's identified between 1 and 9 employees that occupies a gross floor area of less than 2,000 square feet. And that's basically all of us in a nutshell. So if there's any questions or comments, I'll take those. But right now we respectfully request that, like I said, the market's already saturated and we're paying an awful lot for what we believe is actually not fair.
Thank you for your presentation, Ms. D. I'm going to call on council questions.
Also,
Councillor Elliott, followed by Councillor Southcott.
I do have one other thing I'd like to say, sorry, before questions. So Vancouver, I have 5 examples of reductions. Vancouver reduced their fees from $13,500 to $5,000. Kamloops reduced theirs from 5,000 to 196. Nelson from 2,500 to 250. Kelowna from 750 to 176. And most recently, Prince George from 1,500 to 350. So the trend is there, and we're asking Powell River to follow the trend.
That information. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, WD, for coming here and bringing this to our attention. And I would be in favor of getting a report from staff to look into this and let us know what others are doing or what we might be able to do about this.
Yeah, and if you're going to do that, find some justification for it too. Don't just throw numbers out, like what others are doing, why they're doing it, and things like that. Like,
yeah, things were new before, and we've had some time to learn. And so, yeah, I would be in favor of a staff doing a report and letting us know where we're at with that.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. Councillor Saltcutt.
Thank you, Chair.
one
And
of
thanks
those
for
things,
coming.
Council.
I agree with Councillor Elliott that staff should have a look at this. And basically, that's what you're asking for, is Ms. D. I was on council when that fee was established, and it was an addition to the other fees in the business license bylaw, which I had a look at, and I couldn't find small alcohol institute, like liquor stores,
No.
in there either.
Yeah, they're
So,
just categorized under
yeah.
the
So
square
thank you
footage
for
and number of
answering that
employees.
question for me. I do remember that there was a lot of staff time, a lot of expense in lead up to this whole cannabis licensing, and kind of like Y2K, the things that we were afraid of didn't happen necessarily. So I really think it's worth a look again. And specifically, I think staff really, this is a pretty simple situation. I think they're very capable of encompassing what the situations were back then. I didn't read the reports that we had back then. Could have done that. And maybe I will go back, but I don't think they're going to really give us an awful lot of information, more than what we were apprehensive of, and that a lot of that, as you say, didn't turn out. So I definitely support Councillor Elliott's motion to send this to staff for a report back to us. Well, yeah, not a motion, but asking staff, sure, by unanimous consent. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Saltcutt. Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Chair. Question through the chair to staff. Is there, do you know the last time that business license bylaw was reviewed in terms of fees? Does anyone know that?
Okay. Through the chair, I'm looking to my left and right, so we'll have to investigate that.
Thank you.
Okay.
So one follow-up, just thought on this. When we had our training about productive meetings, there was a bit of a caution on, like, I'm thinking about staff time and doing motions for staff time directly on the floor. In order for me to make an informed decision, I would love to have an agenda item that just includes all the reports that we've received in the past, rather than directing staff immediately to invest time into doing the research, because as was brought up before, there's been previous information from staff, and it is from a couple years ago. We've got new correspondence, and so just another thought about a potential motion to gather information before directing staff to actually prepare an updated report.
We did look at the municipal charter as well, and it states that a city cannot make a profit from business license fees, that it can only cover costs. So whatever is happening there, and I don't know, and I do know that a lot of time was spent in the early days. Things are a lot more streamlined now than they were even 4 years ago when we opened, so.
Good point. Sorry, Ms. D. Yes. Before we get back to Councillor Southcott, we'll go to the first speakers, and that would be Councillor Doubt next.
Yeah, I'm going to just go out on a limb here, because I was also here in 2018, where we talked about the first bylaw ever to give business licenses to any cannabis stores. And I agree with what you're saying. Then the fears of what might happen in the area of cannabis stores and the work that bylaw officers might have to do didn't come to pass. It's been fairly quiet. I don't know of any big outcry of any neighborhood to say they've got a problem with a business operating in their area. And it's been 5, 6 years now since these businesses have been operating, and I think it was basically a punitive fee in the first place to maybe discourage people from opening stores or to replace costs that the city thought might come. So I'm prepared to make a motion that staff come back with a recommendation to reduce the business license fees for cannabis operations and include in that the information about how we got to where we are. And if there's a seconder, I'd like to talk about that a little bit. So what I'm saying is I don't think this will require a huge amount of research. I think everybody can see what's happened in the community. There is only one time where we talked about this previously, and that was back sometime around 2018. Mm-hmm. And I think we should go ahead and remove that and get with the program, get it harmonized with other similar businesses like liquor stores.
Thank you, Councillor Doudt. So we do have a motion on the floor, seconded by Councillor Southcott, and we are speaking to that motion that is on the floor. And Corporate Officer, could you just repeat the motion? Same way.
Yes, Chair. That staff be directed to report back to Council with recommendations to reduce business license fees charged to retail recreational cannabis stores in Powell River.
Yep. Councillor Southcott.
Thank you, Chair. I respect Councillor Isaacson's consideration for staff time and the work involved in bringing us a report. I do have a pretty clear memory of process back leading up to our change or our institution of that fee. And it went on for a long time, months and months. And if we were to dig up all the material, correspondence, etc., it's a slew of stuff. So it would probably be an interesting job for staff to pick out what's really relevant and useful for any deliberation we have now. And I just reassert what I said before, and that is I think an awful lot of it turned out to be irrelevant. And I do have a question later on subsequent to that point. But that is why I'm supporting Councillor Doudt's motion. Thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. I'm in support of the motion. It's very similar to what I was getting at. In deference to Councillor Isaacson's concerns, I believe that everything would be outdated and not very relevant and not a good use of staff's time to go back and bring forward all of that information. I think it'd be useful to link to it so that folks who weren't there at that time could go back and review it. And so the relevant information between 2018 and now would be costs affiliated and what are other communities doing, things like that. I don't think it's all that. I think it would be a fairly simple process. And I do think the fee is out of line, and I don't want our businesses to be waiting a long time for resolution. So I'm in favor of the motion, but I do respect that staff would prioritize that amongst all of the other priorities they have and put it in when they can. So there's nothing in the motion that says they have to do that like today or tomorrow. But anyway, I support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. I concur with those comments that I think staff could take charge of this and come back with some suggestions in a timely fashion. And Councillor Southcott, you have a question because I don't see any other hands up.
It's not relevant to the motion, Chair.
Okay, very good. We have a motion on the floor and seeing no other hands in the air, all in favor of the motion? Unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now for the question.
So one of the things that did come up back then was the municipalities, and I believe the UBCM did expect to share profits that the province and everybody anticipated would be coming from this industry. And I wonder if, I really don't expect staff would have an answer for this, but now I'm really wondering what happened to what happened to that, because it hasn't been mentioned since probably 2020 when, you know, the world changed.
Through the chair to Councillor Southcott, as far as I know, there was no further progress on that in terms of us receiving any revenues or any, we can double check with the UBCM, but to the best of my knowledge, we don't get any revenues related to that from the province. Thank you.
This was not the financial windfall that everyone expected back then. And also, we pay quite an exorbitant annual license fee to the province. And also, when we order, we have we have some direct delivery now of small craft cannabis stores, but for the most part, we order from the Liquor Distribution Board. They purchase from the licensed producers, and then they tack on a 15% surcharge before they sell to us. So we pay them, and then we also pay tax. So it's just, you know, it's a cash grab everywhere for us, and the little guy is suffering.
If I may. So I take that to mean that the province obviously is not sharing any money with us, but I'm also gathering that the general impression is that there wasn't as much money for the province either in this.
No.
So it's not even worth chasing. Is that?
Well, thank you for your time and your consideration, and thank you for your motion, and we look forward to hearing from you with reduced fees.
Good to see you again, and thank you both for coming in today. Much appreciated. Okay, we'll move forward on to the next delegation, which is item 3.2, Ms. Pat Martin regarding conflict of interest.
Before I start this evening, I just want to say that I do not want to be filmed or recorded by the documentarian, and I do not give Tla'amin Nation permission to use my image or today's voice recording in their documentary. Okay, can I have my, okay.
Ms. Martin, if I could just make one suggestion, if you could pull that microphone towards you so we pick up your words clearly, that would be great.
Could we start again at 10 minutes, please? I haven't even got to say hello yet, and I'm probably a minute into it.
Don't worry, we'll give you time.
Okay, all right. So good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Pat Martin here. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm here on behalf of city residents who are concerned that two councillors may be in a conflict of interest with regard to the potential name change and other issues involving Tla'amin Nation. My presentation has 4 parts. 1, review of what constitutes conflict of interest. 2, reasons why residents perceive that Councillors Elliott and Isaacson are in a conflict of interest regarding issues involving Tla'amin Nation. 3, request that Council initiate a process to determine if the perceived conflicts of interest are sufficient to require Councillors Elliott and Isaacson to abstain from voting on issues involving Tla'amin Nation. And 4, request that Council postpone the finalization of the Code of Conduct. So, 1, what is conflict of interest? At the February 8th Code of Conduct workshop for Powell River councillors, the facilitator referred to a document from Young Anderson, a law firm, Vancouver law firm specializing in local government law, called Conflict of Interest, which includes the lawful definition of conflict of interest. The relevant wording is, quote, accordingly, conflict of interest law is about appearances and is aimed at avoiding the potential for a councillor to be influenced by personal interest. A court will ask whether a reasonably well-informed person would conclude that the council member's personal interest in a matter might influence the councillor in the exercise of his or her duty as a council member. It is critical that council members approach potential conflicts from this perspective. It does not matter whether the council member believes that he or she can remain impartial, nor does it matter whether the council member is not, in fact, influenced by their personal interest. Conflict of interest law is about preserving the integrity of council and its decision-making processes, unquote. This definition is supported by the following excerpt from the BC government website. Quote, in broad terms, a locally elected official has a non-pecuniary conflict of interest if the following qualifications are met. 1, the local elected official's interest in the matter is immediate and distinct from the public interest. 2, it can be reasonably determined that the locally elected official's private interest in the matter will influence their vote on the matter. 3, the locally elected official or one of their relations or associates stands to realize a personal benefit from a favorable decision on the matter. The key consideration is whether a reasonable person would conclude that a private interest or personal benefit could, note that, could influence or affect the decision-making and be in conflict with the locally elected officials' public duties. When in doubt, it is advised to err on the side of caution and declare any real or perceived non-pecuniary conflict of interest, unquote. Item 2, reasons why residents perceive that Councillor Elliott and Isaacson are in a conflict of interest. 1, Councillor Elliott has a relative, a relation, who is Tla'amin Nation's Deputy Fire Chief, and she works closely with Eric Blaney, a member of Tla'amin's Executive Council, and has done so for many years. 2, Councillor Elliott and Isaacson each accepted a $500 donation from the chair of Tla'amin Nation's Finance Committee for their 2022 election campaigns. 3, Councillor Isaacson appears to have a personal relationship with Haggis Hackett, who refers to her as a, quote, great ally, quote. 4, Councillor Isaacson has acted on behalf of Tla'amin Nation. At the February 15th council meeting, when a member of the public raised a question as to whether council would respond to a quote attributed to Maynard Harry, Councillor Isaacson immediately interjected on behalf of Tla'amin Nation and stated that Maynard was no longer an executive member of Tla'amin Nation. 5, Councillor Isaacson has worked for or is currently working for Tla'amin Health. Remember, legally, it does not matter whether the council member believes that he or she can remain impartial, nor does it matter whether the council member is not in fact influenced by their personal interest. Conflict of interest law is about preserving the integrity of council and its decision-making processes. Item 3, on behalf of citizens concerned about ethical voting on matters of great importance to them, I'm requesting that council initiate a process to determine if the perceived conflicts of interest are sufficient to require Councillors Elliott and Isaacson to abstain from voting on issues involving Tla'amin Nation. Item 4. Further, on those citizens' behalf, I'm also asking Council to postpone finalizing the code of conduct until the perceived conflict of interest issue is resolved, thus clearing the path for a comprehensive conflict of interest policy to be drafted for inclusion in it. I won't be providing specific documents today to support my presentation. However, once the evaluation process has started, people, including myself, will be happy to come forward with information and documents. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you for the delivery. Do you have a copy of your?
Yes, I've given my copy to.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So, Councillor Southcott.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Ms. Martin, for coming and representing. Obviously, you're representing a few people who are here. I don't know if you're representing everybody. And I certainly feel that you're not representing everybody in this community. There was a time in the past when we got things done because of who knew who. And there was a time, it's kind of funny actually, where I remember it being said, you got to be careful what you say about anybody in this town to somebody else because they were very likely related or they had some business relations or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is a small town. This is not a city. There is, what we're doing now is we're dividing.
I didn't hear any.
I heard mumbling.
Please be quiet in the gallery so that Councillor Southcott can finish.
So this is a small town. We get things done because of the relationships between us and who we're connected to. It used to be said, nobody in a small town does one thing. We all do more than one. Now they were referring to jobs, occupations, etc. We are going down, I feel we are so far down a rabbit hole of distrust and division between us that it is becoming very challenging for a table like this to get anything done anymore because we're spending an awful lot of time worrying about who said what to whom, what whoever said it meant, et cetera, et cetera. And we're making also, we're basing our own expressions, our own business, et cetera, on a lot of assumptions that may not be true. So first of all, this quote here, that came from that legal firm, was it? That's a quote from that
Yes.
work that you?
Yeah, I did a direct quote from the legal.
Okay, so this is a quote from the legal firm that wrote that policy that you,
Yes.
or wrote that paper
Yeah.
that you quoted.
Yep.
I would like to suggest, and obviously I'm talking to more than just you here, that we need to really re-examine how critical we are of each other and of what's going on between us and all of the things I just mentioned, because the real enemy here, as I see it, is division between us. We used to be friends with each other. We used to be able to sit down and talk. How much can we do that anymore? We need to get back to that so that we can look after the best interests of this community. And that depends on those of us who have relationships
Councillor
with
Southcott, could
each
you just
other.
keep the
Yes,
phone of
sorry.
your delivery down a little?
Obviously, I feel a bit passionate about this.
Of the people in the gallery. Okay, that's it.
We're not looking after the interests of our community here by allowing ourselves to be as divided from each other as we are. This is the thing that we really need to work on. We need to reconnect. We need to reconnect with Tla'amin Nation. And we need to use the resources that we have, elected resources, to do that. Thank you.
Councillor Southcott, we have a speaking order. Next, we have Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Pat. I know it's really hard to come and be in the public eye and speak to things that are controversial, and I appreciate you coming forward. So with respect to Councillor Isaacson, she diligently sought legal advice on this very same issue at the beginning of our term. And so the question's been asked and answered a number of times, and there has been a process. We've had our lawyers review all of the information, and she's received a legal opinion on that matter. And the legal opinion supports that she's not, if she, the work that she has done in the past is done, and she no longer has work with that organization and no other, and so that past work does not impact her future, and she is not in a conflict. So for just a minute, it's my turn to speak, but thank you. When I get to the questions, then it'll be your turn. So we need to be patient and listen to one another. So anytime someone who owns a business, for example, sells that business, any conflict they would have had with that business is gone. If a business discontinues contracts with somebody, with a client, their interest with that client is no longer applicable, and that conflict is gone. So that's the legal opinion of the day that is from people who are municipal government specialists. So the question has been asked, answered. There has been a process for that. And so that is, there is no conflict for Councillor Isaacson due to her past work with Collaman Nation. So I have another question. I'm not quite understanding the connection between having a code of conduct and delaying that as being helpful. So when we talk about conflict of interest, it's all laid out in legislation, and our code of conduct can neither be more restrictive or different than what the legislation is. It has to be completely consistent. And so delaying the code of conduct, in my view, doesn't help us in that regard. So I was a bit curious about that.
Okay, first of all, I'm not sure that everything has been revealed to the lawyer that Councillor Isaacson spoke with. Are you prepared to show what you asked, what information you gave to the lawyer?
So you're speaking to me, right?
Yeah, okay, I'm speaking to you.
Okay.
Is Councillor Isaacson prepared to show us what information she told the liar, because the lawyer, the lawyer, because how do we know that she told everything that I've learned and other people have learned? We have a lot of information we want to share. I do think there has to be a process. There are literally hundreds of people who believe that there is a perceived conflict of interest. It's your responsibility as a council to address that. I'm not talking just for myself. There's hundreds of people. You know, people come to me. You know that. People reveal, I've got all kinds of secrets on different people, and I have to keep quiet about them, okay? So I don't trust. Councillor Isaacson has told everything to the lawyer, and I would need to see what the correspondence to the lawyer and the answer from the lawyer to actually believe that she's not in a conflict of interest. I do not think she told everything that I mentioned today, and that's my point. There needs to be a committee to look into this. There are hundreds of people who believe there's conflict of interest.
So,
thank you, Ms. Martin.
with all due respect, you're questioning her integrity, which is not okay. So
Yes, I am.
excuse me, I have the floor at this moment in time.
Councillor Elliott, just before we get back, you just hold your comment, because I didn't realize Councillor Dowd had his hand in the air first. So we're going to go to Councillor Dowd next.
I'm going to make a comment. I'm not going to argue with you. I'm simply going to make a comment. In the Community Charter, the Municipal Act, and the Local Government Act, there is no ability for council to stop a member of council from voting on anything. Can't be done. There is no process. There is conflict of interest language in the Community Charter. That language has a determination that describes conflict of interest and describes the responsibility of a councillor to declare that conflict of interest. if they perceive they have one, and to refrain from voting on something. There is an appeal to that. The appeal is if somebody believes there is a conflict that hasn't been declared, they can appeal to the Supreme Court of British Columbia. That's who will make the decision. I point out the quote in your argument about a court will ask. And that's because the decision is with the court. It's not with anybody on council or with council as a group. So I would suggest that if you believe deeply that there is a conflict of interest that anybody has, you make an appeal to the Supreme Court of British Columbia, and there will be a hearing, and it'll all be done fairly according to the rules of law, and an answer will happen. But you're asking council to do something council doesn't have the authority to do.
I think they do have the authority to do that. And it is, the quote talks about the law, the legal definition. According to the legal definition, these two councillors appear to be in a conflict of interest on matters related to Tla'amin Nation. There is an absolute perception by hundreds of people. And I think council needs to talk about it.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. And before we get back to Councillor Elliott, we're going to go to Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Chair. So I appreciate that. I can understand where there is a perception that you're bringing forward today. And so as Councillor Elliott mentioned, it's hard to do so. So I appreciate that. I have opinions based on my experience and values, and opinions that are held out in the community, not only by me. I have stood up, for example, for other council members. A resident wrote in and accused the mayor of conflict of interest on environmental stuff, and I defended the mayor because he brings opinions. He brings opinions and experience.
Please order in the court.
Because of someone's experience and their values.
We're going to try to proceed without interruption. I would very much appreciate, let's let Councillor Isaacson respond.
Yeah, it is possible to have opinions based on your experience that others in the community may disagree with, but having an opinion is what we are meant to do on council. I am proud that Hague's John Hackett called me a friend and ally. That post was made in response to me dropping off some rhubarb plum crisp for him. I have also dropped off soup to the mayor in the past. I tend to do that when people are having a hard time because I feel that food connects us. I received campaign donations from a wide number of individuals in this community that I am proud to accept. The current chair of the Chamber of Commerce donated to my campaign. I expect to continue to make votes on issues connected to businesses in this community. And I'll reiterate what Councillor Doubt said. The process for conflict of interest is very clearly laid out in provincial legislation. I do not declare a conflict, and the only other adjudicator are the courts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Isaacson. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. So the connection of my daughter has a job with Tla'amin Nation. She also does a number of things in the community, not just her job. Everybody here on council has family somewhere out in there in the community that is working for somebody. There is no monetary benefit to my daughter regarding the name change. There isn't. It's a political conversation between two communities where we are to consult with and preferably have good relations with our neighbors so that we can do proper partnerships, economic development, appropriately attend ceremonies, and good relationship building between their council and ours. Good relations is the goal. most of the idea that conflict should include membership of a particular race, community, or what have you is contrary to the interpretation here.
There was no.
You're interrupting me.
Yes, okay.
So the definition that you need to look more into is what is a personal interest, because that is defined as monetary. So you can have a non-monetary, non-pecuniary interest, but personal interest is defined as monetary for your husband, your wife, your child, some such thing. So anything as remote as to be common to anyone within that community is not considered a personal interest. And some folks may interpret things differently. I do not have a conflict in this particular, and I would go before a court and the court would decide what they're going to decide, but I'm really confident that it would work out okay. But people are welcome to challenge that if they want to.
Okay, I did make no mention.
Ms. Martin, go right ahead. Sorry.
I didn't make mention of race. I only said that your daughter has been working with someone who's on Clohaman's executive council, and they've been working closely for a long time. Could it be there's any chance that your decisions might affect her job?
None whatsoever.
Well, that's easy to say. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Your worship, go right ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Martin, thank you for coming out and speaking on a challenging issue on behalf of residents of Powell River. I think the key thing is that council step back and ask, why were we elected and who do we serve? I think the answer is very simple. We serve the residents of Powell River. And since an issue is being brought forward by residents of Powell River, I think that we should put aside our own personal interests, backgrounds, and have a professional person or persons that can give us astute advice as to how council can proceed in a way which is respectful of our requirements to do the best we can to serve the people of Powell River. Thank you.
Your worship. So I'm going to not comment on this issue because it's far above my pay scale. So I'm going to turn it over to staff for any additional comments they may have on this issue.
Through the chair to council, I'll perhaps reference Councillor Dowd that in terms of conflict of interest in determining that is a case for the courts, as Councillor Dowd correctly spoke to. So while we could have somebody like Ms. Habkirk return and speak to this, she is going to advise on matters like this, that if a citizen or a third party is calling conflict of interest, that it proceed through the manner that Councillor Dowd spoke to. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Ms. Martin, does that make it clear to you as to where we are in this issue?
I hear you, and I would like to request that you get a legal opinion from Young Anderson, the Vancouver law firm specializing in local government law and the conflict of interest issue. It could save council a lot of money if it does go to court. I can tell you, it's not something I'm prepared to lead, but I do know there are many people in the community that are considering going to court about this. And I do think it would be an awful waste of money for everyone. So that's my my speech. I want this addressed on behalf of the citizens of Powell River who perceive that it's a conflict of interest. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Okay, thank you very much. Based on that, to conclude, are there any further motions that any council member or the mayor wants to make in this regard? Hearing none, we'll move on in today's agenda. Let me get it up on my screen. So we now move to correspondence, item 4.1. Email received February 20th, 2024 from Louise Scott regarding code of conduct. What is council's wish? Councillor Southcott.
Thank you, Chair. I would move that we just receive this, although I don't think that is necessary. But I can't let this go by without commenting on the second paragraph. And I'm going to quote, 5 council members working for the First Nation and not for the city of Powell River, whom they were elected to represent fairly in all matters. The implication at the very least, for me personally, and I'll speak for myself here as an elected member of this body, is untrue. And I find it insulting actually, because it really diminishes the whole reason I ever intended to sit here at this table. And I think I can speak for every single person at this table that the deepest passion for us is to serve this community. It's very clear that we come at it from all sorts of different angles, and that is a benefit because there are many different angles to be represented here. But to say that we are working for the First Nation and not the city is categorically untrue. And I do feel it's insulting, but feeling insulted is my problem. Again, I just want to reiterate one tiny thing, and that is that I also feel that this encourages divisiveness between us. And I think that that is the deepest enemy we have. We need to find our way to connect with each other again. That is so important. And that's all I have to say about this letter. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Southcott. Any additional comments? Hearing none. I will just say from the chair, as I have said in the past, deeply disturbed and conflicted with where we are in this community at this time. It's not a good place where we are at presently in concern to this issue. We will keep working through the process and we'll see where we end up down the road. But in the meantime, it's just very sad to see all of the disturbance, kerfuffle, whatever you want to refer to it as, dividing our citizens so greatly. It deeply, deeply saddens me, and I'll leave it at that. Okay, moving on to today's agenda. We go to correspondence, item 4.2, email received February 21st, 2024 from Robin Murray regarding hate speech by Maynard Harry. Mr. Murray in the audience. Sorry, it's a correspondence. Okay, sorry, Mr. Murray, not asking you to come forward. What is council's wish? Mayor Wasnow.
Move to accept.
Move to receive. Everybody nodding? Okay, thank you very much. Received. We will move on today's agenda. Reports for decision on item 5.1, temporary use permit 010-7339 Duncan Street. Planner, please come forward.
Thank you very much.
Hello, Ms. Pukash.
Good afternoon. The first thing I'd like to do is just let this committee know that the applicant, Garrett Gentile, is here in the council chambers as well, should this committee have any questions for him. Otherwise, the subject property of this application, which is for temporary use permit 010, is 7339 Duncan Street, which is located at the northeast corner of Duncan Street and Bowness Avenue, just opposite the city's airport lands. Mapping has been provided with your staff report as appendices A and B. The property is zoned M1, which is our general industrial zone, and it currently houses a approximately 5,000 square foot building that dates back to the 1970s. And this building has been vacant for a couple of years now. The last known licensed business that operated out there was a wholesaling business that ended operations, I think, in late 2020. The applicant for this temporary use permit has applied to operate a commercial recreation and entertainment use, of which all proposed activities are not broadly permitted in the M1 General Industrial Zone. He has provided a statement of intent, which is attached to the staff report as Appendix C, and staff have also provided an excerpt of the M1 zone as Appendix D. And for comparison's sake, one can indicate that the broad range of uses such as batting cages, indoor soccer, birthday parties, axe throwing lanes, pitching machines, that kind of things don't broadly fit under the health and fitness center's permitted use. As a permanent zoning change would also require an amendment to the official community plan due to the property's land use designation, the applicant instead is seeking a temporary use permit to allow him to establish this business, which will allow him to test the community's appetite for the range of services he proposes to offer, and also wait out what's going to be a comprehensive rewrite of the city's OCP. Planning staff are supportive of council issuing a temporary use permit for this property based upon an analysis of the considerations established for temporary use permits in the city's zoning bylaw. The range of proposed uses are all to occur within a fully enclosed building and are of low intensity, considered compatible with the nearby uses along Duncan Street, the airport across the street, and the residential properties further north along Bowness. Due to the large interior square footage required to support some of the proposed uses, the applicant has encountered difficulty in finding a suitable space that's already appropriately commercially zoned, and therefore this temporary use permit for this location suits the applicant's needs most efficiently. A temporary use permit is valid for a 3-year term, with the Local Government Act giving the ability for a municipality to issue one 3-year extension for a total of 6 years. Renovations or modifications to the building to support this use will be of low environmental impact and easily removable upon the expiration of this permit. While planning staff in the report did explain the incompatibility of this use with current SOCP language, staff also recognized the impending conversations to be had with the public through the OCP consultation process about how they feel lands within various pockets of the community should be used in the future. Issuing a temporary use permit now would give the applicant enough surety to establish his business within the community, while also giving staff and council the time to complete a comprehensive OCP update that would provide more clarity on the broad range of uses permitted in industrial lands. As a change of occupancy use to the building would occur in relation to the establishment of a business such as this, planning staff recommend that any temporary use permit that is approved be subject to the requirement to first complete any upgrades required to meet the BC Building Code occupancy classification. Staff understand that the applicant has already engaged both the city's building official and an architect with regard to these upgrades. At this time, the recommendation before this committee is that staff are directed to undertake the statutory notice requirements of the Local Government Act, which would be a targeted mail out and publication of a legal notice advertisement in the local newspaper. After the notice period, this application would come back before council for consideration to issue the temporary use permit for a 3-year term. Staff have provided a draft temporary use permit 010 as Appendix F to the report. I'm happy to answer any questions this committee may have.
Thank you, Ms. Pukesh. Questions, concerns? Councillor Southcott.
Thanks, Chair. So I'm aware that there's a big building real close to that one that has pretty much no kind of industrial uses in it that as what we would kind of conceive of to be industrial, although it does have office. It has an office. The building Western Forest Products is in, and there's I think we provided a variance for one use in that building. So the question is, I've got two questions. The first question is it conceivable in our upcoming OCP review that we would even change the definition of industrial, like what we consider to be industrial? Because I think probably since those original definitions were conceived of, we were really thinking more in terms of the mill and other big operations like that. And maybe we have evolved since then. The reason I'm asking that question is because I think it's good for us to start thinking in terms of real paradigm changes. And as far as I know, businesses, drywall is one that most recently, another fabrication business, we're both interested in trying to find land, and there's nothing available in this town. So I know there's a need for smaller enterprises like that. But is it possible that we would change our whole conception as to what industrial is? And the second question is Committee of the Whole has the delegated authority to send this to, or to make this recommendation? Thought maybe we did.
Through the chair to council. On your first question, your recollection, I believe, is that previous council issued a temporary use permit for a naturopathic practice to operate in 7373 Duncan Street, which is the other M1 zone property a little further up the street. The language in the SOCP, which dates back to 2014, so it's now 10 years old, certainly that it speaks to a protection, retention, and even an intensification, let's say, of the city's industrial lands, was based upon public consultation that occurred presumably 12 to 13 years ago. And so there is definitely a possibility that any conversation with the public could be held about how our industrial lands, how we view them, how we use them, and what uses are permitted within them. That change could happen through a new comprehensive OCP rewrite. Yeah, absolutely. For your second question, yes, the city's delegation bylaw does have explicit language giving Committee of the Whole the authority to direct staff to issue statutory notice with respect to a temporary use permit.
Thank you, Councillor Southcott. And,
through the chair, I just wanted to build on what Ms. Pukesh said, and that through the OCP review, we will be doing a land inventory and capacity analysis, which will give us a sense of what our needs are currently and in the future for things like light industrial, heavy industrial, other employment lands, including commercial. And that should be used to inform council and the community about what our needs are and how that might impact any changes to the SOCP. Thank you.
yep. And the next up was Mayor Wasnow, followed by Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. I'd just like to say thank you for the report. And I think it's excellent that an entrepreneur in Powell River is stepping forward to try and utilize a building that's been, I think, sat there since 2021. And so I'm going to ask the chair whether or not I can put a motion or whether I should wait.
Let's just wait till we finish a couple of comments, then we'll come back to you, Mayor. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. So in general, I'm in favor of moving toward more permissive zoning bylaws that are more flexible and allow us to do things that make sense where they make sense. So I too would be prepared to make a motion at this point, and the motion in the package was what I would support. So,
Councillor Elliott, seeing no other hands, Mayor Wasnow, floor is yours.
I would recommend that staff be directed to give notice in accordance with Section 494 of the Local Government Act of Council's intention, consider issuance of a temporary use permit number 010 to allow commercial recreation entertainment use on 7339 Duncan Street, legally described as Lot 9 of Lots 33 and 34, Block 7, District Lot 5731, Plan 9055. for consideration of issuance at a future council meeting.
Moved by Mayor Wasnow, seconded by Councillor Elliott. Seeing no further hands in the air, I just have one question for staff, and that is, could you just explain to the audience and people viewing in the extent of the public engagement that will take place?
Through the chair, we would be following the statutory notice requirements of the Local Government Act for a temporary use permit that is a targeted mail out. Generally, our mail out radius is a minimum of 61 meters from all 4 lot line perimeters of the subject property. So all owners and occupiers of property within that radius would receive a notice letter. And we publish a notice in the legal notice section of the Powell River Peak once. And the notice would give the particulars of the permit, what uses could be permitted, and the date and time that council would consider issuance of the permit, and provide an earlier deadline for any members of the public who feel their interests may be affected or wish to make representation to this council to give some feedback.
Thank you very much. Motion on the floor. All in favor? Unanimous.
Thank you.
Very much. And we move to item 5.2, downtown plan, parcel economics, land use feasibility study.
Good afternoon.
Just before we start, we're just going to wait till the gallery clears out, and those that want to leave quietly. Okay, let's continue. Thank you very much. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. The purpose of this report is to follow up from a November 14th, 2023 report that this committee received about the downtown plan. In November, Parcel Economics appeared online and presented their findings from the land feasibility study that's part of the downtown plan. This report has the study in its entirety, and staff are asking that this report be received for information so that we can continue with the downtown plan process. Our consultants, PWL partnership, can use this information to inform their recommendations, and that the downtown plan itself would come forward to future council meeting for consideration.
Okay, that was short and sweet. Not a lot of detail. Council, questions? Could you just expand a little bit on the contents of this and just give a brief synopsis for everybody viewing in?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the parcel economic study is a land feasibility study. They look at current market conditions, and if development was to occur on the old arena site or the Westview wastewater treatment plant site, what might be feasible considering the current economic situation. They did a highest and best use land use analysis of 2 other sites as well, but the principal focus was the Westview wastewater treatment plant site and the old arena site. They found that current economic conditions would make it challenging to develop the site at this time, but that doesn't mean that we can't get ready to consider development in the future. If things like interest rates come down or building costs come down, the site might be more feasible to develop in the future. The perspective they were coming from is from a private sector development perspective. So they didn't consider things like government subsidies that could make development more attractive, or if developers have other things that they'd be trying to achieve in development beyond just meeting a specific profit margin. So I think that summarizes the highlights of the report.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Chair. When they attended the meeting previously, kind of when their interim findings were shared, a number of members of the community reached out to indicate or wanted to know if council was aware of a covenant on the land related to park use. And so I'm wondering if you, specifically the old arena site, and so I'm wondering, I think there was a concern that the recommendations mean what we will do, but I'm hoping you could just share a little bit more about how this integrates into the downtown planning process, and how any change of use for that land, what process might exist before changes to that use of land might take place.
Thank you, Councillor Isaacson. Through the chair, so the process as a whole is the downtown plan has had many components. We've done archaeological studies, we've done this financial feasibility study, we've also done some site investigation for environmental contamination, and PWL Partnership is the consultant that's preparing the downtown plan. So they take all of that information and think about what can we do to strengthen our downtown to make it even better than it is today. They will be putting together a report for us to consider, which will have recommendations in the report. So the first step is council would consider receiving or adopting the downtown plan in its entirety. And then after that, there might be recommendations in the plan itself. I don't know at this time what PWL will recommend as it pertains to the old arena site or the Westview wastewater treatment plant site, but generally speaking, in a downtown plan of this nature, it's not uncommon that there's recommendations that say the city can be a first mover in making a development in order to encourage the private sector to make developments as well to strengthen a downtown. So a bit soon to say. And then in regards to the covenant, we have had two legal opinions over many years. We did a recent one, and then there was a very old one as well that said that council can discharge that covenant at any time through a council resolution.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarity. Next, we have Mayor Wasnell, followed by Councillor Almeida.
I was just going to be supportive of the recommendation that the staff has presented, but Councillor Almeida has another issue first.
Almeida, go right ahead.
Thank you, Chair. No issues per se. I have no problem with the report. I was curious when I was reviewing it, specifically the section around the what's it called here? The old barge terminal. And I was just noticing on the map that was included in the report there, the section that was red. And I noticed, I guess now, granted, it's a small picture and the red section might not be exactly to scale or whatnot. But based on the picture, I guess it was a boat launch or boat lift that was there next to the Coast Guard station that appears to not be used anymore. Is that part of the consideration of if something is developed or adjusted on that site, that contraption would be part of, like, I don't know if that would be removed or not, or if that's just, I just noticed it wasn't highlighted, so made me curious.
Through the chair, thank you for that question. On the old barge terminal, I know our colleagues in infrastructure services have been looking to dispose of that boat lift by sale, or I'm not sure of the means, and we can get more information and get back to you. I think the important thing to know about the old barge terminal is it's leased land. It's not land that the city owns, so a bit more of a challenging site.
Thank you.
Councillor Almeida, and just before we get the mayor making his motion, just one comment. The report was thorough, appreciate that. And one of the items that I found interesting is based on current market conditions, they were basically saw a path forward of perhaps private condominiums erected on those sites. However, I'm happy to see that staff is considering all options and all the other issues that come along with that, with grant funding and all the rest. So good job, staff. Much appreciated. Mayor Wasnow.
To move that the land use feasibility study prepared by Parcel Economics be received for information.
Moved by Mayor Wasnow, seconded by Councillor Southcott. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much.
Ask a question, Chair.
Right. I have one question.
Thank you. So not directly related to accepting this, but contingent on, there's a lot of city or community interest concerning various parcels, particularly the old arena site. And a few years ago, 3 of us set up a pop-up consultation down at the old barge terminal, and we got 500 replies. And that was just in a 3 or 4 hours, or maybe not even that long, and all sorts of ideas of what people wanted to use. But the thing that really struck me was that there was so much interest in doing something down there. So the question is, could there be kind of low impact temporary uses, like possibly like boxes for community gardening and maybe a market or something in the old arena site, and possibly pop-up cafe or, coffee shop down at the old barge terminal. That seemed to be about the most popular, or what people wanted most, was some picnic tables and, just a place to sit after they'd walk down the beautiful seawall and back. So temporary possible uses in those sites?
Yeah, through the chair, for the old barge terminal, something that was part of this downtown plan project was Catnip's murals down at the old barge terminal, and through our sort of our food truck program, there is food that's down there. But I hear you, we've heard that in the public engagement too, that there really is a desire to see something more happen there. With the old arena site, we've have a couple of markets there that's programmed through our economic development team. So there's an appetite for sure. I think that's something that staff could look at.
Thank you for the question and thank you for the answer. Appreciate it. So we have moved the motion, so we will move on to today's agenda, and that is item 5.3, Community Emergency Preparedness Fund Grant Joint Application with Cohaman Nation.
Okay, through the chair, I'll speak briefly to this, and this will be something that we'll be asking you to defer and move forward to council, for council to make the resolution on this. So this is a situation where the deadline for the grant has passed, and we have put in the application with the understanding that they're holding it based on getting a motion from council supporting that we can apply for this funding. So this grant, and by the way, I will send regrets from Chief Drakely, who's not currently with us today, that this is the Community Emergency Preparedness Fund grant, and we are in partnership with Cohaman applying for one portion of the grant, which is for a generator for our #1 fire station. And what this will allow is for basically that department or that building to serve as a emergency operations center district-wide. So as you may know, we have partnerships with fire departments in the Cathet region, and by having this application hopefully be successful, it would allow us to have a generator. So in times of emergency, we can continue to use that building for emergency coordination. Thank you.
Thank you, CIO, and Councillor Dowd.
I was kind of expecting we might see the fire chief here tonight. I've got a couple of questions, I guess. I'll just list them off. The first would be, I've been in Fire Hall #1, and if that's going to be the emergency operations center for disasters, I'm wondering about the amount of space that there is there. And well, I'm not sure that really makes a difference to this grant. I think the grant is really getting money for a generator. Other questions would be, I think the Tla'amin Nation is supporting it as a partner, but that's the extent of their support. They're not going to provide any additional funds, and the generator is going to provide electricity for Fire Hall #1, I imagine. And the last question is that the application talks about cooperation between the Tla'amin Nation and the City of Powell River, but really emergency preparedness is a major responsibility is with the Cathet Regional District, and I'm wondering why the Regional District isn't a partner as well.
Through the chair, those are great questions, which I also asked staff. So to be clear, emergency coordination overall, so beyond fire departments, continues to be with Cathet. And this is specifically to fire-related emergencies. So the Emergency Operations Center and all those pieces that we do through Cathet continue. This is more about sustained emergency response related to fire and that specific aspect of emergency operations. Your other question was around partnership with Cohaman. So they are also applying for a $30,000 grant. So although they're two distinct ones, they're going together and the funder wants to see them proceed. And part of the relationship is a sharing of resources. So should there be a situation where we need their support, their equipment helps region-wide, as does ours. So I hope I have channeled my inner chief to respond. Thank you.
I've actually got two more. If I could just have a supplemental question. The first one is $30,000 is the grant amount. Is that how much the generator is going to cost and installing it? And the final question is, where is it going to go? There's not a lot of space in that piece of property.
Through the chair, I might look to Ms. Denniston. My understanding is 30,000 is for the total cost of the generator. And I might add that I was personally surprised before Christmas when we had some extreme weather that caused a power outage, that station number 1 had to use a generator off the fire truck to keep going. So was glad to see staff come forward with this initiative. Ms. Denniston, I don't know if you have any more details.
Through the chair, to echo the CAO, the $30,000 is going to cover the estimated cost of the generator and installation. And as far as the technical question around where and is there room, I do know that the chief has worked with Mr. Bertig on that piece, but I don't see an answer to that technical question right now. We could report back with an answer.
Yep. Councillor Dowd, do you have another question?
No, that's most of the ones I can think of right now, but by the time it comes back, I'll have more.
For Southcott.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd like to just for a moment put my previous emergency services chief hat on and just to add a tiny bit of detail. An emergency operation or a departmental operations center for the ambulance, which is what I was responsible for, could fit into my car with like 3 or 4 radios. For the fire department, because ambulance is usually in and out very quickly. Fire department's job is much broader from the standpoint of rescue and in terms of all of the major kinds of emergency that are anticipated could possibly happen here. So this is a departmental only center. It's just the department, but it would link with the other departments as well. And the bridge over Powell River is a recognized major hazard if there was a quake to separate north from south in our community. So, which is the reason for having adequate emergency supplies on the north side of that bridge as well as down here. But fire departments end up involved often for months, and police as well as necessary, but ambulance often just in the initial response. So I just wanted to make that distinction that this was departmental, which is a part of the incident command system that is used by emergency services in British Columbia. Thank you.
Very much. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. So given that the application has gone in and we are needing a council resolution to support that in order for it to move forward, is the recommendation in the package in order, or should it be more to send it to council?
Through the chair to Councillor Elliott, it's exactly that. Send it through to council. Thank you.
So I would make that motion if, yeah.
Just a show of hands would be appropriate to council. Everybody in agreement? So be it. Thank you very much. And we move to the report for information section of our agenda today. Item 6.1, community engagement reports. Councillors, we'll start with Councillor Amita.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, and just a few different events and stuff throughout the weeks past. Just a few sessions. The library is actually going through some strategic planning as well. So after not having done strategic planning ever in my life prior to this, I get to do 2 different rounds of strategic planning this year. So they're working on that as we speak. Had a chance to partake the Sunshine Coast Tourism Northern Advisory Committee meeting last week. Just a few updates over there. And of course, recently there was publication of a report. The Sunshine Coast Tourism is working on a path or a network for accessible transit. Transport, I should say, from the lower coast through to Lund and stuff. So it's a bit of long-range plan that they're working on, but that report's publicly available for those that are interested. And yesterday I had a chance to attend an event put on by the Powell River Community Foundation, so learned a little bit about that group as well. So quiet week overall, but that's my report.
Councillor Armida. Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you. I'm just looking at our calendar. Our last committee of the whole was February 13th. Is that right? When you're looking back to okay. So a couple of things. February 14th, there is a walk to commemorate murdered and missing Indigenous women and Two-Spirited Plus girls. And at CRC, there was a small gathering and some poetry read and some stories shared. And so Maggie, who is so often visible in this work, was leading that. And I just want to express appreciation for Maggie and the folks at CRC for organizing that. Next up was, on the 20th, I think all of council that was in town anyways, I know Councillor Palm, you were on holidays, attended the ground blessing ceremony for the Aye Our House Cultural Center, which will be, the ground was broken for across from or beside Cousin House at Tishosum. And so really great ceremony with the federal minister of Crown Indigenous Relations, etc. So some great words were shared there. It'll be a cultural gathering space and also a traditional food processing space. I attended the youth resource sharing meeting on the 22nd, and that's where different service providers who serve youth get together and share what's going on and what issues are facing. Some of the things of note to me that stood out in that session were related to one disturbing trend locally on the unconsensual sharing of sexually explicit images among youth in our community. And so RCMP and local school folks are working on that. A lot of it is related to youth understanding what consent and sharing is, and there was a note that the Civil Resolution Tribunal, which is a provincial group that deals with some resolutions outside of the courts, has a new process set up so that if people find materials about themselves online and want resolution to get those images taken down or something else to happen as a part of that, you can make a claim through the Civil Resolution Tribunal. Anyway, so that was one concern. And the other concern, there's a new staff worker who works with Qathat Safe, and she works with sexual assault survivors, and most of her working through the court systems, and most of the people that she's working with right now are youth. And so we've got a lot of vulnerable youth in our community, and important for, just from my own personal experience, I know that youth succeed because there's an adult who's paying attention to them and cares. And so anyways, really some really heartbreaking information coming out of that meeting, and just glad that we have a lot of caring folks in the community who are working on those issues. I attended the artist trading card night that's held by Qathat Art and Wares, and I don't know, there must have been 20 plus people sharing little tiny art cards. And so for those budding artists in the community who just want to do something small and get art of others, I was able to get arts from very well-renowned artists in our community. I think it's happening the third or fourth to the fourth Thursday of every month at the bowling alley. So just great job for Ka for putting that on. And I know a lot of councillors attended the Black History Month celebrations put on at Carlson Club. Councillor Almeida was there. Mayor Wasno was there and received an award, and Councillor Southcott. Anyways, I don't know how many people you think were there, 150, 200, and everyone got fed. Lots of fantastic displays and presentations highlighting the past and present of the Black community in the Qathat region, and just great yeah, I want to raise my hands to the organizers. It was a fantastic job, and when I see grant applications pop up, I send the application forms their way. Hopefully this will become an annual occurrence. And I think I will stop there.
Thank you, Councillor Isaacson. Much appreciated. And those the report on your last item there is very much appreciated. Thank you very much. Councillor Dope.
I'm going to just try to sneak in an announcement here and talk about the Four Tides Hospice, which is providing an opportunity at the Art Center today and for until the 9th to get a birdhouse for your backyard, because the birds are coming back, and they've had builders throughout the community build some pretty creative birdhouses, and they've been decorated by local artists, and they're going to be having a silent auction started today at the Art Center, and it's going through to the 9th. I think everybody around the table here needs a birdhouse for their backyard, and they're not cheap, so go and sign up for one and make a contribution to the hospice so they can get busy and get a facility built locally. We really need one, so they can use the support.
Thank you, Councillor Dote. Councillor Southcott.
Thank you, Chair. Nobody's mentioned the UBCM housing conference yet, which was right over top of the last time we had a council meeting, like 2 weeks ago, I'm pretty sure. Was it 3? No. Anyway, it was pretty interesting, especially the lawyers who gave us overviews of the new legislation. It was good to kind of get some idea of what does and what doesn't really apply to us here, and that and get a feeling that we're already on the road because of the progressive staff we have, particularly in planning department. So 2 things that I did that I attended a noon discussion of the Community Energy Association, which is a energy conversion consulting organization. It's been around for at least 10 years now, that ex-councillor Leishman now works for. It was entitled Bringing Resilience to Disaster Risk Management. It was delivered by a member of the climate, not consortium, but the climate table of the provincial government, who now is working with the Ministry of Emergency Management and Climate Readiness. So climate is now being fully overlapped with emergency planning, which hasn't really, so this is in a way a new connection. But I also found out that the deliverer had this seismic file as well, which gave me opportunity to, later on I've dug up her email address and asked her if there was any news on the seismic early warning system that's been, the province has been working on for about 10 years now, that we lobby almost every year at UBCM. And the good news is that it's expected to roll out this spring, which is really amazing that after lobbying and waiting for so long, now what this is an array of sensors all over the southwest British Columbia that will collect information, the P wave, which is very fast traveling waves from a seismic event, process it, and then send it out to anybody who could be at risk from the event. Now, the P waves are fast moving, hundreds of miles an hour, and the mechanical shaking is slow, which could give communities, and that means official buildings, almost anywhere, advance warning of up to 45 seconds at best for a coming quake. And that's real time. So this is something I've been looking forward to for about that long. And our fire hall is a prime candidate because of it being an unreinforced concrete block building, highly seismically vulnerable. But we have lots of other buildings like that as well. So it would probably be very good to have that kind of warning. So that is really great news. Just one one other thing, I also attended the Powell River Community Foundation's presentation yesterday, and I found out that they would accept an application from us for Zungabus funding. Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Mayor, for suggesting looking for other sources of funding. I don't know how much chance there is of that, but I did want to ask staff how they thought we should approach that, because I certainly want to follow up any possible source for funding. Anyway, and that's there's a few other things that I did, sort of the small normal things that we all do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stocott. Councillor Elliott?
Thank you, Chair. So I did attend the common ground blessing ceremony for the area where they're building their new cultural center, along with many others that went on that day. It was, can't remember the exact day, but also as part of my duties for the regional district, I sit on the Vancouver Island Coastal Communities Climate Action Group, and we are planning our annual climate summit, which everybody who's here is invited to, along with staff that can do that. And this year they're doing it in 2 virtual sessions of 3 hours each in the mornings of Monday, May 6th and Monday, May 13th. So if people wanted to try and attend the climate summit for local governments for Vancouver Island coastal communities, those are the dates and times for that. I'm on the BC Ferries Advisory Committee as well, along with my colleague, Councillor Palm. And recently in the news and on radio and print media, we've had a lot of attention and interviews of our chair, Kim Barton-Bridges, and the chair from the Lower Sunshine Coast, Diane Mumford. And what they're trying to do is get some action on the lack of public meetings that's been happening. The last public meeting was canceled, and we have had no rescheduling of that. And the media has picked up on that, and Kim Barton-Bridges has been working very hard to try and get those back online. The issue was BC Ferries had canceled some due to needing security or safety measures for their staff. And it's been since last October, I believe, since there's been any public meetings for the BC Ferries. So if you see that in the media, that's our chair working extremely hard to try and get those meetings back on track so that we can have better input into BC Ferries. On March 1st, I met with Michelle Hanna, who is the director in charge of our hospital and Vancouver Coastal Health Operations here in our Cathat region. And she indicates the renovations going on in our emergency room should be done by mid-June and would result in better services and better utilization of space in our emergency room. They're putting in a consult room for private conversations because many of the patients they receive need a space such as that to talk to doctors, and there isn't one there at this point in time. And better storage, so much of the clutter that is inhibiting the flow of the emergency room workers to do good work with the space that they have will get put into better storage and not be cluttering up the way. There is more renovations coming in the fall to increase the amount of space that they can use for the emergency, and they're looking at a better triage area and expanding the waiting area because they're aware that it's quite crowded. There is also upcoming for Vancouver Coastal Health a master plan which deals with all of the clinical care within our region, and it would impact sort of future planning for long-term care for seniors and collaborative services and things like that we need to build because we don't have enough of in our area. And I had thought they were starting that this spring. They indicate the terms of the request for proposals has not got out yet, and they think it'll be closer to the fall. We did the detox beds for our complex care. They're still working on and are not open yet, but they feel they're getting closer and closer, and hoping those would come online soon. When pressed for a date, I got none, so I still don't know the date for that. The family physician's primary care network is open, so if people don't have a family physician, they can call the primary care network and get them to help you link up with a doctor. We do have a new nurse practitioner in the medical clinic on Marine that has just started, so that's excellent. Their coffee shop in the hospital is now open. They've moved that in-house and they don't have that contracted out anymore, and its hours are Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. till 2 p.m. So if you were needing coffee at the hospital and couldn't get it before, you can now. They've changed a bit of their management structure for the long-term care. They've gone from one manager of both facilities to each facility, Willingdon Creek and Evergreen both have their own manager now, so each facility has their own manager, and that is a good and positive increase in resources for those facilities. They still only have one manager of acute care, which is the entire hospital, so that's still a stress point for them. They indicate that what would help them from the city is trying to address the housing shortage. They find recruiting staff to be challenging with the lack of housing in our community. And so I am taking that back and letting everybody know what we all know is that housing has to be our priority for that. What else did I have on here? I think that they were they pointed out a thing that's going on in the Lower Sunshine Coast, which is a network of some kind of a housing availability for short-term healthcare workers, short-term being 6 months or up to a few years for new employees that come on. They can phone up this place and try to find short-term, like a shorter-term rental or lease that is not necessarily permanent to allow them to find housing within the community. And so I've forwarded that information to staff to see if we can look at this thing they're doing down there and find out how it might work in our community. And they're also hoping to utilize the Zunga bus for clients who need rides home at discharge and don't have a ride. A lot of the times they're backing up rooms because they're trying to connect folks with rides that just need to get home. And so they were not entirely aware that the Zunga bus could do that for them, and now they're looking into see how that can support them. So that's my report.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. Mayor Wasnow?
Thank you, Chair. Like most of council, I did attend the Lamon ground blessing as well as the Black History Month. I think it was wonderful, and I've talked with some people here earlier, that the individuals that put on the Black History Month celebration really were reaching out to the community to share a number of different things that they thought would enhance Powell River as a place to live, whether it's the music, the food, whatever. And I can guarantee you that at some point, people started texting to their friends about the quality of food, and enormous number of people showed up. I participate in the North Island Sunshine Coast Regional Advisory Committee, and that's important to Powell River because they have the ability to provide grants, and I know our staff has done an excellent job of applying for money. did have a conversation with Harbor Air because, as people know, there's an opportunity for Harbor Air to expand their business. And they were quite excited to know that, in fact, the city would be supportive of this. So it worked well. I also participated in a new organization that John Henderson, the mayor of Seashelt, has put together. It's 13 mayors of communities about the size of Powell River. We just got together to discuss innovation to meet housing and economic challenges. And I can tell you that the other 12 mayors were absolutely dumbfounded to find out that we have 150 city-owned properties that could be used to help deal with housing challenges and create economic opportunities. So I suggested they simply move here and they could enjoy the benefit of that. That's it, Chair.
Your worship, much appreciated. I'll just conclude with a couple of brief comments. One, I attended our select committee on city-owned lands that the mayor just made reference to. And if you remember at the last committee of the whole or council meeting, we were discussing some concern about members on the committee and how that committee was functioning. But I'm happy to report that after our last meeting, things have, thanks to staff, have come along at a great pace. And when we left the meeting that day, everybody was on the same wavelength and looking forward to the task at hand, which we greater defined because we were a little lacking of direction at that point. So happy to report we're on the right track. And just to follow up on the ferry comments, you know, our ferries, we have a lot of issues, even though we have brand new ferries. When they're not sailing, that's a problem for Powell River. So there is a number of reasons for that, not just weather related. But when you're traveling, make sure you're checking the websites, and if you have medical appointments, make sure you are phoning ahead to make sure that you have reservations on those sailings to make your appointments. So having said that, thank you everyone for your reports. And one last comment. Sitting in this chair, this is one of the lengthiest processes that we have on our agenda in terms of how it works. So I would greatly recommend in the future that we try to keep our comments maybe a little shorter to 4 or 5 items that are utmost on your delivery, and try to speed things up a little bit in that regard. Thank you, everyone. And let me just bring my... Okay, so we now move to unfinished business. 7.1, Powell River Chamber of Commerce Council Liaison. And I'm not sure who's speaking to this. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. I do recall when our former mayor Formosa came to present to council that as a delegation that we asked staff to bring back this to an agenda, and there was a previous letter, I think almost a year ago now, from the Chamber of Commerce indicating that they would be happy to have a liaison from our council to the Chamber of Commerce. I support the idea because it increases our communication and keeps us in the loop with our local Chamber of Commerce and the business community. And I'm hoping that somebody on council would like to be such a liaison, and that we could make a motion or a recommendation to council to make a motion to appoint somebody here on our council as a liaison to the Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. Mayor Wasno.
I would be willing to do that, and in particular because of the conversations that I had with the mayors that I referred to, the importance of having a very good relationship with Chambers of Commerce, especially as everybody knows, we're moving through a transition period. And so that's the offer I'm providing.
Oh, yes, Councillor Dell.
recommend that we move that to council for a decision.
And just before we move it to council, and I get heads nodding, just one question. Did we get a formal request from the chamber?
Through the chair, I couldn't find one when I asked the chamber if they had any record of one. They didn't have a letter, so I don't recall actually getting a formal letter. It could have been a previous delegation presentation, but
It was just correspondence, I believe. We could try to find it. It did come through one of our agendas, as I recall. I don't remember exactly what meeting, but I know that the Chamber of Commerce did send us a letter at some point.
Simply ask the question because in terms past, the mayor was thinking of being a person to attend the chamber meetings, but he saw it as a conflict of interest. So I'm just wondering if we got that formal request or not. Oh, just throwing it out there. It would be nice if we had a formal request from the chamber.
Through the chair, I think it did come through correspondence and it was attached to an agenda at some point. I think it's almost a year ago now. And it did speak to that, and we had received that correspondence but had not acted on it at that time. The former mayor maybe thought there was a conflict because of his own business interests within the community. I don't think our mayor has that same situation. And so we could find that letter maybe and attach it to when it goes to council.
GAO.
Through the chair, we can absolutely look that up and make sure that we bring it forward on Thursday for you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
To council?
Just a question of clarification.
Let's go right ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So clarification, what we are deciding right now is to send this motion with, instead of a mayor, that, like, we're recommending that council consider appointing Mayor Wasno as liaison. I want to get what we're voting on right.
Is that clear that you would fulfill that role? Good. Thank you for that clarification.
So the motion I made was to refer the question of appointing council, consider appointing a member of council as a liaison to the Powell River Chamber of Commerce. I'm not arguing that it should or shouldn't be the mayor. I was just saying my intention to move the motion to the council meeting was to move the council consider appointing a member of council as a liaison to the Powell River Chamber of Commerce. And I don't think Mayor Wasno is in a conflict of interest. But, you know, the idea was to speed this process along and have the discussion at a council meeting. I heard the president of the Chamber of Commerce stand at that microphone right over there and ask council to do that. I think we can assume the Chamber of Commerce wants a liaison person.
That clarification moved by Councilor Dow that we move the recommendation forward, seconded by Councilor Isaacson. Any further comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. And now we move to item 7.2, which is the draft code of conduct. And who is going to be speaking to this one?
Through the chair. Through the chair, I think. Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. So the purpose of giving this to you, as you know, on February the 8th, you had Alison Haberkirk in open meeting go through code of conduct discussion. We were following up on a motion from council, bringing forward the Cathet Regional District's code of conduct that they'd adopted as a basis for the conversation that council had with the facilitator. And since this went in open, that we're giving you the draft and open to consider so that you have it to peruse and to bring forward at a future council meeting. So you may wish to look at it more thoroughly, take some time, and we can also bring back Ms. Haberkirk if there's anything you'd like to discuss. But you'll see that primarily this follows the Cathet Regional District's Code of Conduct with some changes, obviously, that are specific to councils versus regional district boards. and then also referencing our policies and the wording of our policies that are different than the Cathet regional districts. Thank you.
Thank you, CAO. Any comments? Hearing none from
Whoa,
council.
whoa, whoa.
Oh, sorry. Councillor Isaacson, followed by Councillor Dowd.
Councillor Dowd had his hand up first.
Councillor Dowd, go right ahead.
Oh, I'm a little concerned about the motion because it simply says refer it to a future council meeting. And that could be sometime in 2027 or it could be soon. My personal opinion is it should come back to council for further discussion. I think we need at least a legal opinion on any inconsistencies or any issues that a qualified lawyer sees with the code of conduct draft that we have. It's not exactly the same as the one that the regional district uses, and I think it would be wise before we take another step to have a legal opinion on exactly when that is. But I'd like it to see it come back sooner rather than later, within the next few months sometime, because I think it's actually important to have a code of conduct, and then people will be able to read it and understand exactly what it says, because it might be different than some people think it is.
Thank you, Councillor Dowd. You have a lot of wisdom having gone through that process at the regional district. Councillor Isaacson.
Could maybe a question related to Councillor Dowd's comments. I'm wondering if I could ask staff through the chair where legal has touched this so far, and do we need that step?
Through the chair, we understand through our colleagues at the Cathet Regional District that they had a legal review, and staff did feel that given the changes, there was limited risk. However, we are more than willing to submit it for legal review, and I think that would be absolutely fine. And through the chair, just to make it clear, we didn't give a date because we wanted to give council the discretion of picking how much time you might like to consider the draft. Thank you.
It's not a question so much as a potential change. And so I want to explain what I'm thinking. I'm wondering procedurally how to do this, but to simplify, there are two sections on communication, one on social media and one on interactions with the public and media. And so in both cases, these are places where we are acting as council members. And I think that they almost could be combined because there's points in one that I think relate to the other. As an example, 9.1, members must not post personal comments or status updates that reflect negatively on the integrity of the organization. I think that's also true of public comments. Members must not make public comments that reflect negatively on the integrity of the organization. Like 10 point.
Councillor Elliott, I'm just going to.
I'm over here.
We don't have to go into lengthy detail at this point. This is for council's information to take away and work with and then bring back their comments. I don't want to belabor specific issues at this point.
So we're in committee of the whole where we're trying to hash out this. If I have potential, I'm wondering if do I need to make a very literal amendment if I want to make recommended changes, or are we in discussion about do we like this well enough to move it along? So I'm through the chair or to staff. How much direction are you seeking at this point?
Through the chair, I think we're aware that some of you may need more time than others, but we're willing, of course, to take any feedback you wish to give us and make amendments and bring that forward. Thank you.
So I will reiterate today, I don't think today is the time and place. I think you need to take it away, have a good, thorough, communicate with staff, bring your concerns forward, and then they can come back to again, future committees.
So Chair, I don't know when else to bring my concerns forward. We're in a meeting discussing this on the agenda. So I'm seeking clarity. When else would I don't want to direct staff to do anything outside of this meeting because it doesn't represent the will of council. So this is where we're hashing things out.
Councillor Dowd.
I think when I saw this motion, I got the idea that what staff was hoping we would do was bring this back to another committee of the whole meeting at some future time, after we've all had a chance to look at it in detail and think of the different amendments we might want to make, and then set aside a significant period of time to talk about amendments and amendments to the amendments, and to do the wordsmithing that we like to do as a council. And I think it's important that we do that, because we have to get it right. Because a small mistake in a definition will lead to a big problem in the future. I can guarantee you that. It'll happen. So it's worth spending the time. But I think I thought that the goal of this today was to say, here's a draft. The public can see the draft. We will be getting together again at a future date and spending much more time talking about how we could change each and every part of it if we want to. Well, rather than that, I think we can deal with this kind of quickly tonight, but I would like to see it come back within 1 or 2 months instead of 1 or 2 years.
Councillor Delp, we hear you loud and clear. Mayor Wasnow, followed by Councillor Elliott.
Right. I was just going to move the motion that the draft code of conduct be referred to a council meeting before May the 5th for adoption.
Moved by Mayor Wasnow. Do we have a seconder?
I didn't hear the last few words of it.
Oh, before May 5th.
I just see staff looking uncomfortable with that.
Yeah.
Through the chair, I think that timeline's fine. However, I think for council to have the type of discussion I'm hearing, having a committee of the whole in between that would be wise. So I think it would be good to perhaps, without interfering with your work, amend that to make it clear that there'd be a committee of the whole prior to May 5th.
You'd like me to rephrase that then?
It's not seconded yet.
And I guess part of the question to council would be how much time you'd like between us bringing it back to committee of the whole. The next one is in 2 weeks' time. There's another 2 weeks after that. Thank you.
You finished, Mayor Wasnow? Do you have any additional comments?
Well, we do not have any motion.
Mm-hmm.
No, we don't.
What I would move a motion is that draft code of conduct be brought back to a committee of the whole meeting by April the 5th with the intent to bring it to a future council meeting before May the 5th.
Councillor Isaacson.
Yeah, I'll second that motion.
We have a motion on the floor with the 2 dates proposed, one committee of the whole, the beginning of April, first week, and followed up with coming to a future meeting on beginning of March.
May 5th.
No, whenever. Go right ahead, Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. So I think the motion is fine, but the process around how we get all of the work done and in what order might be questioned. So we're asking for a legal review before it hits council, and we're asking for some time on an agenda when people are prepared to discuss the current draft. And I think maybe we want to make sure we've discussed the current draft before we get legal review, or maybe the other way around so that legal review's comments can come into the draft. I'm not entirely sure how that works. Maybe staff could provide some recommendations around process so that we are all clear how this is going to happen.
Very good comment, Councillor Elliott, because this is quite an extensive document.
Through the chair, thank you. And thank you for your patience with us as we lead you through our first code of conduct with you. So you can do both. And if we were to do legal review between now and April 5th, which is very feasible, we would have to do it again after, I would suggest, if there are further changes. So it may be helpful for you to see if there's any changes that legal may recommend or if it stands. So I would suggest that we can have that ready for you prior to the next committee of the committee of the whole by April 5th. Thank you.
Councillor Almeida?
Thank you, Chair. I'm not opposed to the mayor's first part of the motion. I feel like a legal review, as the CAO suggested, would be best after we've had a chance to discuss any changes we need to make or want to make so that we're not spending on lawyers twice. And for that reason, I think the second half of the mayor's motion, the May 5th deadline, might be a little too time sensitive to allow for a legal review and to have it on the agenda. So I feel if we were to continue, I'd rather make an amendment to remove the second half of the motion, focus on the April 5th, get it on the committee of the whole. And from that point on, then we can better estimate when we can get it on the council agenda, because that realistically might be June or possibly July, just depending on timelines.
Yep, good comments, Councillor Almeida, because I think this can take a little bit more time than just dancing through a couple months from now. Councillor Isaacson.
I was just going to second that amendment if it was made.
Kind of, yeah. I did say amendment.
Second the amendment to strike out the second portion of the motion.
So, Corporate Officer, could you read our current amended motion?
Chair, sorry, the motion that you're voting on right now is to remove the May 5th piece from the main motion.
So everybody satisfied with that? I'll call the question. All in favor? Unanimous. So we are back to the main motion on the floor. And does anybody need that read again? Hearing and seeing no hands in the air, all in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. And I just will comment on that. The public, this is on our website, so if you are interested in the code of conduct, please take a look, because I know it was mentioned earlier today, and it's there for preview. Well, thank you very much on that. And we move to now the no new business notice of motion analysis of Zunga bus, brought forward by Councillor Almeida. Sorry? Oh.
The notice. So there's no discussion.
Oh, there's no discussion. So we're not discussing. Oh, so it's
For the future meeting, yeah.
very good. That brings us to, before we get to a motion to go in closed meeting, we have questions from the press. Mr. Galinsky, you have a question.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anybody online? Nothing online. From the gallery. Please state your name and address, and we'll take your question. And question should be on today's agenda.
State that do not want to record at a documentary, and we want to give patient permission to use this or today's voice recording in the documentary. You can speak into the
just pull that microphone a little bit towards you there. I'm a little clearer.
I have some simple yes or no questions for Councillors Isaacson and Elliott based on the perceived conflict of interest, and I trust they won't mind answering them. And they're simple yes or no. Councillor Elliott, have you ever stated that you do not support the equivalent of a referendum on the question of a name change because it would fail?
I have never said that, no. I have never said that, no.
Councillor Isaacson, are you currently working for Cohaman Health Do you have any plans to work for Cohaman Nation in the future?
No.
Councillor Isaacson, aside from your job as a consultant to the Provincial Name Change Joint Working Group and your work for Cohaman Health, have you ever worked for Cohaman Nation in any other captivity, paid or unpaid? For example, for an executive member of the nation or for consultant to the nation or in any advisory role for the nation?
No.
Okay, my name is Kelly Dijon, and I also live in Powell River, mayor and council. I didn't realize quite how short I am, but I also have some questions for Councillor Isaacson and Elliott, and trust that they will be transparent in their answers, simple yes or no. Councillor Elliott, are you aware that a family member works closely with a member of Cohaman Nation's Executive Council?
I'm aware that my daughter, Lindsay Elliott, works in the fire department as the deputy fire chief of Cohaman Nation. I'm aware that legislator
That would
Eric,
be a yes.
Eric used to be the deputy chief and no longer is.
Okay, on to the next question. Have you ever given any financial or non-financial gifts or incentives to a member of the Cohaman Nation's Executive Council, or have you ever accepted any of the same from a member of Cohaman's Executive Council?
No.
Hey, Councillor Isaacson, have you ever?
Excuse me, sorry. So protocol gifts when you're at a meeting and have to receive a blanket or some such thing would be an exception to that, but it isn't the intent of what your question was, I do not believe.
No,
So,
I understand
yeah.
that. Okay. Councillor Isaacson, have you ever given any financial or non-financial gifts or incentives to a member of Cohaman Nation's Executive Council? Have you ever accepted any financial or non-financial gifts or incentives from a member of Cohaman Nation's Executive Council?
As previously mentioned, I gave rhubarb crisp, plum crisp to actually a number of members of the Executive Council. And I can't think of, I mean, protocol gifts, maybe cards, I don't know.
So that would be a yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and now I have a personal question myself. This was more for concerned citizens. The city, you were just talking about a group that was put together to advise on matters of city land use, give recommendations, is that correct? A committee for that. What I would like to know, or my question to council is, what is the composition of the committee? And what is the manner of appointing members to the commission?
Mayor Wasnell, that is your select committee. You may want to answer.
Actually asked the CAO and her staff to respond, so we'll get some exactness.
Through the chair, we're just looking that up right now.
Maybe point of order, this wasn't on the agenda tonight. I suspect staff would get back in writing to the questioner.
Fine if we get back to you and ready?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good.
Yeah.
We will do.
Would it, I might add to that too, would it be the same for any committee? I notice up on the website, you have like an application that people can fill out for one of the committees.
If you see me after the meeting, give me your contact. I can fill you in via email if you like.
I'll do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions from the gallery? Please state your name and address.
Afternoon, Ted Vizzuti, Paul River, down on Hammond Street. Simple question. How does City Council feel that they can be accountable in funds regarding the Zunga bus? On the way here, and you can answer that as soon as I finish this. On the way here, I passed both the Zunga bus and the BC Transit bus, the small one. One, the BC Transit bus was sitting up at the ballpark on Boness, and he was just sitting there under the bushes, and it wasn't being used, wasn't going anywhere. So there's one sources of funds being used. And then I passed the Zunga bus, and it was sitting on the side of the road, nobody in it. And I'm not saying that they haven't been in it, but at that point it wasn't being used. And most of the times when I see it, it doesn't have anybody in it. So again, you're wanting to expand the resources and use of the Zunga bus. How can we afford this?
Councilor Armida, do you want to answer that?
Mr.
Point of
Vice-
order, Chair. The notice of motion is not for us to speak to tonight. It's for a future agenda. And so it's not technically on the floor to be asked questions about because we haven't even been able to talk about it. So it's.
I'm going to ask for clarification from staff that since there was a motion for a future motion on the future agenda, does the citizen have the right to ask a question in regard to Zunga bus operation?
Chair, the procedure bylaw speaks to questions only being 4 items on the agenda. It doesn't speak to a notice of motion on the agenda, so I would say it's at the chair's discretion to allow it or not allow it.
Okay, I'm gonna limit to brief discussion in this regard. Councilor Armida.
Thank you, Chair. I think I can safely answer without overstepping. Mr. Vasudi, quick clarification. You said you saw the Zunga bus sitting on the side of the road on your way to the meeting today?
Yes.
Okay, so as far as I understand from what I've read on the Zunga bus site, the Zunga bus operates 11:30 to 6:30 every day with a scheduled break between 2:30 to 3:30, which is when the time you were traveling to the meeting today. So your driver was probably taking his legally registered lunch break when the Zunga bus actually doesn't operate at that time. I can't answer for the other bus. It might be on a similar thing. As for my notice of motion, which was in reference to the other question, I'm just looking for information. There's no decision that's going to be made. The information might come back and we might not decide to go forward with it, or by the time that information comes back, as Councillor Southcott hinted at, there might be a chance to have some grant opportunities. So it's gathering information to find out next steps. I might not vote for it either. We'll see what the information says when it comes back.
Great. No, thanks very much. That's fine.
To ask for
That gives answers. The second one that I wanted to talk about was the emergency preparedness for the community and the regional district. Before I ask my question, I'm just going to give a little brief background. 39 years of being in emergency services, I happen to be involved in the 2003 wildfires up in Kelowna. To watch that incident command set up there was a massive building and a massive amount of people that were involved. For the fire chief, and I'm not sure who the other gentleman is, but I think it was part of the parks department for the Powell River, talking about number 1 hall on Courtney Street as being a building for use for that type of scenarios. It is definitely too small for what they want to do. It is definitely not usable for that type of a scenario. There is a lot of different agencies, such as Councillor Southcott mentioned, being involved in a wildfire scenario if this is what they're worried about for our area. It's just not this certain fire departments. So just keep that in mind that there's a lot more involved. With this, I'm wondering, why is the city looking for grants of $30,000 for a generator that can be placed outside at the fire hall there on Courtney Street, but the facilities within it is not capable of sustaining that amount of power? It can't even run the microwaves properly in that building. And I know that it's falling apart because I was in it when the last earthquake hit and we watched the cracks hit. So my question there was, why are we looking at doing grants of this amount of money for a facility that probably won't hold the infrastructure for it, and definitely won't hold the infrastructure for containing this amount of people to run a situation if it gets to the size they're talking about? We did look at years ago the complex as being the main center for size and people being able to sit and set up properly. It has the generators. It's got the capabilities. It's got the infrastructure that you require. The other aspect of this is the Ministry of Forests, who control those areas, are the main player in all of this. So why are they not involved in bringing funds forward to work this scenario? They're the main player. We come in and we augment with them. But for us to be putting $30,000 into a grant just seems like a waste of money to you as council for that question.
Thank you, Mr. Vizzuti. I think our CAO has a response for you.
Through the chair to the speaker, I think there's perhaps a little bit of confusion. So the 30,000 grant is 100% funded. We're not putting any money in. And one of the other pieces too is we recognize that some of our facilities are older. Actually, first I'll jump to your first point, which was clarifying that, again, this is not meant to supplement the plans of the Cathet region. This is a complement to it. So the scale of disaster you're talking about in Kamloops, Kelowna, that type of thing, would continue to run out of the other bigger centers. So what this is called a departmental operations center, very much focused on that interagency fire response. So just to clarify for you and others. And then there was another piece I was going to add about the building itself. Yes, I think you're perhaps alluding to the fact that if we had a major disaster that was not just helping others respond to fires in their areas, structural fires that is, that we have a building that, yes, in a seismic event would be challenged. Absolutely. However, with something like an investment in a generator, it can be ported from more than one place. And I do have faith that our civics team know that building, know that we've been able to run a generator to keep the lights running through a blip that we had before Christmas. So with all due respect, I think on behalf of staff, going after what is free money to build resilience region-wide, it's not an either or, it's an and to supplement the bigger piece that you rightly mentioned is still in place. I think there was maybe one other question you had through the chair.
Basically, it's all in regards to the $30,000. We know that the building can't hold. Personal experience, know the building. But be it a grant, be it our money, we still have to pay for it. Some way or another, a grant is paid for by the taxpayers of cities or regional areas. So however you look at the money being come in, it might just be $30,000 to a generator that's not required for that building because that building is not a suitable building. We already have it in other places like the complex, possibly. So.
Thank you, Mr. Vizzuti.
Thank you. Thanks for the answers.
Yes, Burton. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair and Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to ask questions. With respect to agenda item 3.2, the legal definition of non-pecuniary interest means a personal or private interest that is non-financial or monetary that would be considered as being likely to influence a transaction or decision. This includes any tendency towards favoritism, bias, or ill will resulting from relationships, friendships, or other personal involvement. With regards to concerns that the non-pecuniary conflict of interest is not shared by the majority of the community, pursuant to provincial guidelines and the Supreme Court of Canada ruling, key consideration is whether a reasonable person would conclude a conflict of interest. I'm getting to a question. BC guidelines also recommends when faced with uncertainty to seek legal advice. The guidelines do not recommend legal action to obtain a court decision. So my concern is, why is Council not following the provincial guidelines which state no legislative requirement for a locally elected official to obtain legal advice on conflict of interest. However, it may be in the public interest for local government to establish a policy and enable locally elected officials to seek legal advice on such matters. So why, as the city in general, not going to seek legal advice for what Ms. Martin brought to your attention today?
We have any comments from staff before I get to Councillor Almeida?
Through the chair, I believe one of you answered this previously about a prior legal decision. And again, it's at the discretion of council if you want to repeat that or so.
Councillor Almeida?
Which is exactly what I was going to say, as Councillor Isaacson did her due diligence, got legal advice prior to any of this coming up, I think, as she was elected to council. So whether members of the public wish to accept the legal opinion that was given to her or not, that's up to them. But Councillor Isaacson's done her due diligence, and I'm going to trust the very expensive lawyers that they gave us the right information. So,
thank you, Councillor.
Can I respond to that?
Right ahead.
So the provincial guidelines is that a locally elected official, which would be Councillor Isaacson, does not have to obtain legal advice. Now, Ms. Martin's delegation has presented to you concerns in the community from reasonable people perceiving conflicts of interest. So why is the local government, City of Powell River, not willing to seek legal advice on behalf of the city? So that none of us know what legal advice Councillor Isaacson received. She doesn't have to release that to us. That's my understanding. There's a lot of people in this community very concerned. They're reasonable people and they have a perception. Conflict of interest, non-pecuniary conflict of interest is occurring.
Any further comments? Yeah, Councillor Southcott.
Just a quick one, thank you. Conflict of interest that involves pecuniary interests are really simple. And that's the thing that we're schooled in initially. And we've had various sessions around this table during the time that I've sat here. The kind of conflict of interest that is being discussed and that you've brought up, Sherry, and that was brought up earlier by Ms. Martin, has been discussed earlier as well in information and training sessions for councils. It is, I don't want to use the word discretionary, but it is a matter of judgment, and it also can become, it drifts very quickly into what becomes political. So it is not black and white. In my memory, this has been made clear over and over again. And that's the salient element here, in my view, and that is it is not black and white. So if it ever was to be taken to the Supreme Court, which is the ultimate arbiter, and it is really the only way something like this is going to be settled beyond what the will of council is, it would probably, what we've been told in the past is it would have to be really obvious in order to ever be settled in terms of the complainant. The point here is that this is such a massive an area of gray area. We've been advised in the past to try to just stay in the black and white easy zone and stay out of this as much as possible. So I just offer that because it's easy for us to get into fights in the gray area and really not have a resolution that serves the community's best interests. And I feel we're very much in that place right now. So we're jeopardizing our own unity and ability to work together, and that really worries me. I'm sorry I got emotional before, but it really does worry me, and I hope that that's helpful. It's based on a number of times that I've been involved in listening to discussions of exactly these questions.
May I respond to that? So You've expressed so many gray areas, and it sounds like you're trying to determine it on your own. And the provincial guidelines is saying to seek legal advice. It's not saying start a court action. It's to seek legal advice. So why wouldn't local government seek legal advice that can be shared with the public? So the reasonable people who perceive there's conflict of interest occurring can read that advice.
Question, Mr. Burton. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll speak for myself, not council, because I can't do speaking for council anyway. So we do have legal advice when it comes to Councillor Isaacson. I've never sought legal advice because nobody's ever thought that I should, but I'm not against it. But I wouldn't be able to vote with council for that matter on legal advice for myself, because that would be a conflict. So I'm not opposed to that. I'm also not able to participate.
But I think we're getting a couple of things mixed up.
But the question was, why is council not seeking?
I meant at the local government, not each individual, not you and Councillor Isaacson. The local government, which is the City of Powell River, should seek a legal advice on this, because it seems, as Councillor Southcott just said, there's so many gray areas that you're all trying to interpret.
I hear what you're saying. And what I've been told in the past in terms of conflict, it's up to each of us as individuals to decide on our own whether we're in conflict. And as previously stated, Councillor Isaacson has sought legal advice. It hasn't, obviously it's confidential, and she is going on the recommendation that she received at that point in time. Now, if the public perceives something else, as Councillor Dowd has said, there's not much the city can do other than to ask for another legal opinion and bring it forward. I don't know if the council would allow that confidential information to be delivered, but it's something we could consider perhaps. And, or your other option is to go to Supreme Court.
So that's just interesting, because it just seems very clear to me through the provincial guideline that you can go get a legal opinion, and it wouldn't be specific to each councillor. It would just be, here's where we are, and here's, because there is a perception in the community. I'll go on to my next question. It's regarding agenda item 9.1, the Zunga bus. I realize that this motion is a notice of motion, but I'm just wondering, when I looked at the report from December 19th that the city staff prepared, it doesn't break down the fares. So a normal fare is $2.25, but you can buy books of tickets, so 10 for $20 and 20 tickets for $35. So that renders the cost down to $1.75, and I've lost the other one. So $2, easy math. So I just, when the report indicates that it costs the city $13 a ride, and that's after ridership fares are calculated. My question is, what I would like to see in future discussions about the Zunga bus is the breakdown of how many people are paying $1.75 for a ride, how many people are paying $2, and how many people are paying $2.25, because that would change the difference in how much the city is subsidizing the ride per rider. So that's my
Councillor Almeida
question about that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Ms. Burden, you're stealing some of my thunder here for 2 weeks from now, because the fares on the Zunga bus are definitely something that I wanted to bring up to the agenda. But all that comes up as conversation in 2 weeks, because the notice of motion just says I'm going to bring it up, and it's still up to council to vote in favor or not. It might get squashed at that meeting if council doesn't feel like there's an interest to it. So we'll see what happens in 2 weeks.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Almeida. Thank you, Ms. Burton. Mr. Edwards, welcome.
Mayor and Council. This is directed to Councillor Southcott. You talked earlier, you got quite emotional about how we should be working together. Well, all I can say is this council has done everything it can to split this community in half. There's a lot of people that are very concerned with what's going on, and this council has not taken the citizens of Powell River serious about what we want to see. It seems that it's all one way. You know what? Reconciliation, two sides, not one. And you get pretty emotional about how we should all work together, but we don't see that. And that should be obvious to this council. When you look out at the gallery, every meeting is full. You know what? I've been involved in different things in the community for many, many years, different things that I've fought for. And I have never, ever seen where we have to have RCMP to come in and keep control. That is absolutely ridiculous. That should never happen. And you know what? It would not happen if you people on council would listen to what some of the citizens are saying. They are not happy. And you guys aren't listening to us. That's obvious. Every day you got a full gallery, right?
Question.
And you talk about working together. You're not working together. You're not working for the citizens in town. It seems that everything you do is focused out there. And I don't have a problem with what's happening. I'm all for it. We need to work together. But that is not happening. You people are not working for us and them. You're working for them.
Mr. Edwards, do you have a specific question you'd like to?
My question was, do you honestly think what this council has done has not split this community right down the center? I've never seen the hostility in this town in all the years I've lived here is what's happening now. And you know what? Personally, it makes me sick. I went home after a meeting we had here, the split. I said to my wife, you know what? I never thought I'd hear myself say that I could move from Powell River because I'm embarrassed of what's going on here. There is a definite split, and it's hurting everybody in this community. Thank you.
I've got a very...
Councillor Southcott would like to respond.
Very simply, I think, Mr. Edwards, you and I both love this community equally. I think you love it just as much as I do. I know that. And I don't think, this council has had a very, very challenging time seeking to work together, and so does this community. The splits are in the community as well. This is the thing that worries me the most is I'm hearing from people who see things very differently than you do, as well as many who see things the way you do. Now, how do we find our way back together again? We must come back together. We must find our way back to
listen to both sides.
Yeah.
Listen to both sides.
We're listening. I honestly.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
Hello, Robin Murray here. Good to see you all again. This is in regards to item 4.2. The comments, the letter that I wrote in, it was accepted. I wanted to find out, will there be any discussion on it?
That's a good question. When we accept letters, staff, what happens to that correspondence?
Through the chair, it's received. It's on the agenda as part of the public record. it's the will of council what you do with correspondence and whether you discuss it or simply receive it. Thank you.
Okay, so it's, I'm sure you all read the letter. There is a lot of people very upset by Mr. Maynard's comments, and his picture still hangs up there. I've seen a little article in the paper about some sort of an apology, but it wasn't a real apology to everybody. There's a lot of people that don't like that accord hanging on the wall anymore. And there's a lot of people that are upset by Maynard's comments. And from someone who was very well respected in the community in the past, I find it hurtful to see that hanging on the wall. In the future, I think it would be good to have a discussion about the community accord and what it says and what it represents and who's on it. Perhaps there should be a meeting and between the two communities to have a discussion again. It's we're a very divided community, and that there hanging on the wall after his comments of last month is a lot of people are quite upset, and perhaps it needs to come down. Just going to leave it there, or I'll wait for the comments.
Councillor Southcott.
Thank you. You're not the only one who's upset. Someone else who I know is upset went and talked to him to find out what he meant. She approached me, not somebody at this table, and not somebody whose name I'm gonna mention here, but she found out things that helped her reconcile herself to what was reported. Now, we make assumptions that we understand what was said. The reporting was not here. It was a media source that was in that's New Westminster, apparently. It's an online source. Do we ask ourselves, what are the assumptions? What are our own assumptions when we hear words like that? Yeah, they're very inflaming. And I could tell a story of that exact same word used many, many years ago in another community that that pissed off that community royally. But I was on the other side of the table that time. And what happened was communication occurred, and people weren't happy ultimately, but it did go away. So my question is, do we trust our own assumptions that we know what he meant or we know what he said? Maybe we should start listening, start actually asking questions of our own. And I'm going to go back to the person who did and who found out some new things. Can we please keep open minds and not throw things out? There's more to every question. There's more to every concern like this than perhaps we see.
Thank you.
Yep. Mr. Murray. Any further questions from the gallery? Seeing none.
Motion.
We have a motion to go in camera. Councillor Isaacson.
Yeah, I move that following adjournment of this regular meeting, council move into a closed meeting to discuss matters covered by the community charter under sections 90 bracket 1, A, personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee or agent of the municipality or another position appointed by the municipality, and the consideration of whether a council meeting should be closed under a provision of this subsection or subsection 2, and 92B, the consideration of information received and held in confidence related to negotiations between the municipality and the provincial government or the federal government or both, or between a provincial government or the federal government or both and a third party.
Moved by Councillor Isaacson, seconded by Councillor Southcott. All in favor? Unanimous.
To adjourn.
Councillor Doubt.
Adjourn.
What?
Seconded. Motion to adjourn.
Adjourned.
We are adjourned? Oh, adjournment. All in favor? We are adjourned at
Suggest we go on the-
6:00.